Acts like the one in Rockland County are on the rise. There's no question about it. Perspective now from Jonathan Greenblatt, who's CEO and National Director of the Anti-Defamation League. As someone who's called for the full extent of the law on these attacks, I'm wondering, what do you think about the hate crime charges filed today?
Look, I think it's incredibly important. When someone bursts into a person's home after having driven almost a half an hour with a machete and attempts to butcher them while they're lighting a Hanukkah menorah, that isn't an accident. That isn't just a happenstance crime. That's a hate crime, plain and simple. And calling it out as it is critical so the broader community understands this wasn't just an isolated incident. This wasn't just, again, an attack or a crime committed against a single family. It's a threat to the entire community. It needs to be treated as such.
And you have seen in New York a rising problem on this.
This happened over the past few days. After a series of incidents over the past several years, we have nearly double the number of anti-Semitic incidences across the country just a few years ago as we are today.
Double.
And in New York, we've had hundreds of anti-Semitic incidences in Manhattan and in Brooklyn and now in Muncie.
What accounts for that? I mean, can you track that?
I think there are several things that are affecting us. Number one, we have an environment where hate has almost become part of the public conversation on a daily basis. We have leaders who engage in prejudice. It happens full stop from the highest levels of the land. Secondly, we see leaders in other positions of authority who almost dismiss or deny that anti-Semitism is a problem. But when you fling around conspiracy theories, when you make accusations against Zionists in a haphazard sort of way, when you hold Jews collectively responsible for all the world's ills, this creates an environment in which anti-Semitism is tolerated at a time when we need a zero-tolerance policy on prejudice.
It also, when leaders use that language and that sort of have that attitude, it emboldens everybody else.
Yeah, you can think of anti-Semitism like a virus. It's been around for thousands of years. It existed before we had the United States of America, right? Literally, it's been a problem, part of the human condition for millennia. So this virus exists just under the surface. But when our collective immune system is weakened, because again, leaders engage in prejudice, because other people don't call it out when it happens, because social media encourages a remarkable amount of slander and stereotyping. When our collective immune system weakens, the virus explodes. Mm-hmm. And it shows up in awful, ugly ways, as happened this week.
I still cannot get over Charlottesville. I cannot get over the fact that hundreds of Americans were willing to show up, carrying Nazi flags and chanting "Jews will not replace us" and "blood and soil," and, with a tiki torch march of hundreds of people. I mean, I just find that in the United States, which battled Nazism, which battled hate, obviously I'm not an idiot. I know these groups exist.
Right.
But the blatant showing of those colors to me is...
Yeah, we were talking about this. I remember it very distinctly. It's just a few years ago, right? And our analysts at ADL, we knew that rally would be big. It's much larger than we thought. Mm-hmm. But flash forward to 2018. We had a record number of hate crimes, the third highest total we've seen in 40 years of collecting this data. What's interesting is only 13% were committed by known white supremacists. So stated differently, almost 90% were committed by ordinary people. Talk about acts of harassment, vandalism, and violence. And the machete assailant this weekend, he had known ties to white supremacist groups. We don't know definitively he was part of some black Hebrew Israelite sect. We don't know anything about him other than he was a deranged individual. And that's the problem. The normalization of anti-Semitism, Anderson, an environment in which people feel like it's okay to traffic in these tropes, to push around this kind of prejudice. We need our leaders to lead, and we need this to stop now.
Jonathan Greenblatt, I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.